All right, let's just give folks a little bit of time to move in here. Lucy, what's up? How are you? Let's give everything a chance to wake up. I gotta see it. You know how that goes. And it looks like we are going on the YouTube. Yes, YouTube is awake. What's up, everybody? And Rockfin, are we live on the Rockfin? Yes, we are. Okay, we are live on the Rockfin. We are live on the YouTube. And I'm not seeing the chat. Let me see if I can change that. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on there, but yeah, guys, chat. Let me know you're there, and I'll hopefully see that. But what's up, everybody? What's up? Welcome to the second episode of Expatriate under the Get Your News On with Ron umbrella. Expatriate, this is the series where we talk about all the ins and outs of leaving the United States or different ways you could leave the United States, whether you are wanting to leave the United States or just looking to have a plan just in case or just looking to learn more about it. What are my options in terms of visas, passports, residencies, citizenships? We're going to go through all of that and the different ways that one can, quote, expatriate from the United States. Some people don't like that term, but I'm indifferent. I don't like it or not like it. I just think it's sort of an easy way to designate this series. That's why I called it that. I don't really have strong feelings towards that phrase one way or another. This is our second episode. First of all, just a general Get Your News On with Ron announcement. This week is going to be a little bit weird. This is going to be our only episode for the week and our only podcast for the week. I kind of had Again, I'm kind of dealing with something in my personal life. It's nothing bad. It's just something very significant. And I've had a few kind of last minute schedule changes and stuff I've needed to attend to. So I was going to do this episode a little bit later, but because of the weirdness of the week, I thought I'm going to do the second episode of Expatriate now, and that'll be our main podcast for the week. And Lucy came up to say hello. Hey there. Hey, girl. What's up? Lucy's here. You know how happy that makes me. Lucy is here. She says hello. She says meow. For everyone listening to the podcast later, Lucy just jumped in my lap, and it makes me so happy. And she's probably wondering, she's like, "Why are you doing this right now? This isn't a typical time that you do this." She's right, but yeah, it's gonna be the time for the second episode. So the topic this week, I'll get right into it. The topic this week is the path I'm choosing and why. And the reason I wanted to make that this episode is because these are all the things that I thought about before choosing the path that I have chosen. I'm still working on it, by the way. Like my story is not complete, but this is the path that I have chosen and why I've chosen it. Now, a few things to know here before we get started. This is going to just be like a cliff notes on why I chose what I did. This isn't going to be a deep dive into any of these topics. What I mean by that is everything that I mention, we will do a deeper dive into. So if I mention something and you think, oh man, I'm really interested in that, I want to learn more. Is Ron going to talk more about that? Yes, I am. But for today's episode, the main theme today is to just the things that you need to consider as you're choosing your path and the things you might want to consider based on what I considered. So everything that I mentioned, we're going to do a deeper dive, but that's not really the purpose of today's episode. We're still sort of just getting into the shallow end, so to speak, if that makes sense. So if I mention stuff and you're like, whoa, I want to learn a bunch more about that, but Ron just sort of skimmed it, there's going to be a deeper dive episode into all these things. So that's the first thing. First thing to note about today's episode, and yeah, I think that just about covers the disclaimer on what to expect out of today's episode. And again, you guys have been sending me a lot of cool stuff. If you have different thoughts or different topics you want covered on this series, please feel free to email me and I will start looking into it. The first handful of episodes, we're just going to kind of like build a foundation here, but then I'm going to do deeper dives into a lot of stuff, a lot of different topics, different visas, different rules for countries, taxes, different experts in different fields. It's going to be a good time. Oh, and last kind of thing here. somebody told me, or a couple people have reached out and they expressed that they would like this to be more than once a month. I will try to accommodate that. I will do my best. Right now I'm just sort of getting my legs underneath me with this series, but who knows? Maybe it will morph into a weekly thing or a twice a month thing. I'm going to take it one step at a time. Right now, due to scheduling, the second episode's happening now, and we'll just see where it goes from there. But so that's basically those are all the announcements. I covered it. So here are the things that I looked into, and these aren't the only things I looked into, but these are the main things that I got kind of serious about when I thought about wanting to get a second passport, wanting to have a plan if I were to ever leave the United States. Now, again, me personally, I don't have a plan to definitely leave. I love my neighborhood. I love where I live in Southern California. I don't want to leave, but I kind of want to have a plan, A, in case it ever gets down to that. And B, here's a reality about the world we're living in. If you're not thinking globally, you're going to be left behind. Now more than ever before is the time to think globally, but act locally. I've gotten some emails from people, just another quick aside. I've gotten some emails from people where they're like, Ron, why wouldn't you stay and like people need to stay and fight here? They need to do their best here. And it's like, well, why can't you do both? Why can't you do your best where you're at and keep trying to make the society better where you're at, but also think about what the future may hold? Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it be both? I think it can be both. I think you can most certainly think global and act local. And I think that's what the contemporary moment in our society calls for. Whether you like that or not, I think that's the way it is. So, anyway, moving on. Here are the things that I seriously considered the most. First, we're going to start with Canada and permanent residency in Canada. Now, Canada, of course, is our neighbor to the north here in the United States. Some of my favorite cities, Vancouver, one of my favorite cities in the world, Toronto, I like a whole bunch. Now, on a personal note, one of the reasons I started considering Canada was because there was a potential for a gig for me that I could have relocated to Toronto for. Now, the gig never really materialized, at least not the way we were thinking it would, but I would have had the potential opportunity to relocate to Toronto for it. I wouldn't have had to, but I could have. So that was why, like Canada, I started looking into it a little more seriously. And here's the other thing. This is just sort of a fun aside. So my family's from Pennsylvania. My wife's family is from Massachusetts. We live in Southern California. So we both kind of thought about the whole idea of if we were to relocate to Toronto, we would be closer to family. I only bring that up because I think it's kind of funny that we were in a situation where it's like, well, we're thinking about leaving the country so we can be closer to family. Are they leaving the country too? No, they're staying there, but we would technically be closer to them. I just think that's kind of goofy. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of other ways people could be in that situation, but I just thought it was a goofy aside. So that was why we were thinking about it too. Now, Canada, if you're thinking about Canada, a couple things to know about visas over there. There's a few things that they really, really like as far as letting people into their country. They really like doctors, which I am not. They really like engineers, also not an engineer. They really like teachers. I taught community college. I guess I'm kind of in that category. Are you a doctor, engineer, or teacher? Now, here's the fourth category, and this one's a little broad. They really like creatives. They really like people who are self-employed and who will add to Canada's economy, well, either helping jobs for Canadians or at the very least, not taking any jobs from Canadians. So if you're a creative, say you're a freelance writer and you just make all your money or most of your money online or something like that, you're kind of attractive to Canada because they know that you're going to come to Canada. You're not going to take a job from anyone. You're self-employed and you're going to be contributing to their economy. If you're a creative person, like say you make films, say you create content or something like that, again, you're pretty attractive to Canada. A, again, because you're self-employed, you're not going to be taking jobs from a Canadian. And B, because you might be able to hire Canadians. And they know that, hey, if you're a filmmaker, well, where are you getting your crew from? Are you going to pull from Canadian people? They want to hear that you will. So, again, we're going to do deeper dives into all this. You don't have to like memorize these categories right now. And there's probably a few more categories I'm not thinking of, but again, cliff notes. So I was looking into Canada and permanent residency in Canada. Now, with Canada, if you are a permanent resident in Canada, that is different than being a citizen, but basically the main difference and pretty much the only difference is you can't vote, you can't run for office. Those are the big things. If you're a permanent resident, you can't vote and you can't run for office. Everything else you can do, you get health care. I know that's a big one. Everyone's wondering about. You can get health care, but I'm pretty certain you can't vote and you can't run for office. Now, you could become a dual citizen of Canada and the United States. That is totally permissible. And then, of course, you could vote. Now, I don't know if there's a thing in Canada where you had to have been born there to run for office or not. I've never looked into that part. When we do a deeper dive in Canada, I will have looked into that. But right now, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But that's the first thing I looked into. Second thing I looked into, digital nomad, specifically in Portugal. So a digital nomad, what is that? A digital nomad visa, which we are going to be talking about a ton more. So if this interests you, don't worry about getting everything today. We're going to be talking about this a ton. But the cliff notes again, a digital nomad visa is basically a visa that allows you to travel to different parts of the world and just work there because you are a quote digital nomad, meaning you only need a solid internet connection to be at work. So you just kind of travel everywhere and you just kind of work out of there. That's what a digital nomad is. Now, in Portugal, Portugal has a program called a D7 visa. And some of the D7 visa holders are people who just invest a ton of money into the area. Others are just people that have what's considered passive income, and digital nomads fall into that category. Now, Portugal has a pretty flexible policy where you can be a permanent resident there for, I believe it's 5 years, and then you can apply for citizenship. So a lot of expats go to Portugal. A lot of digital nomads, they settle in Portugal. It's a pretty common thing. And Portugal is a really cool place from what I've heard. I've never been there to tell you the truth, but I heard Portugal is pretty cool. Out of all the places I was seriously looking at, Portugal is the only one that I personally have never been to. So I didn't choose either of those methods. The method I chose is this third method that I'm going to tell you about. It is citizenship by descent with Italy. Now, citizenship by descent is when you are applicable, like you qualify for citizenship based on your ancestors. Now, not every country has a program like this, but some of the countries that do, Italy does, Germany does, Ireland, and I think Croatia. Don't quote me on that. Again, we're going to do deeper dives. These are just kind of cliff notes and factors you want to think about. That's more the purpose of today's episode. But Italy is one of those countries. They have citizenship by descent, and my family is Italian. And so I found out, first and foremost, that I qualified. Now, how does one qualify? It varies based on the country. I don't think every country's rules are the same. But the way Italy's rules are is, first of all, there's not a cutoff as far as their relationship to you. They just have to be a direct line. With some countries, it cuts off at like your grandparents or great grandparents or something like that, where it's like, well, it has to be your grandparent or further back or, your parent. And if they are, citizens, you can get citizenship by descent. Italy does not have a cutoff like that. The only cutoff Italy has is that the ancestor had to have been born when Italy as we know it was a thing, which I believe was in 1861. So basically, your relative had to have been born after 1861, and they have to be a direct line, meaning a parent, grandparent, great grandparent, etc. They can't be like, this is my uncle or this is my cousin. They have to be direct line to you. But as far as where they are in that direct line, it can go as high up as it needs to, as long as they were born after 1861. For most people my age, it's probably going to be a great grandparent. I guess you got a shot at maybe great, but great's probably as far back as you go. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. So I qualified, to use myself as an example, I qualified based on my great grandfather. Here's where it gets a little tricky. The way it works, it depends on when, if you are in my situation and you are qualified via a great grandparent, it depends on when your grandparent was born and what that great grandparent's relationship was to the United States. So here's how it works. If when my grandmother or grandfather was born, if that great grandparent had naturalized or become a citizen of the United States before that grandparent was born, I wouldn't qualify for citizenship by descent. But if they hadn't, like let's say my great grandparent is an Italian citizen. They go over to the United States. They're just an immigrant in the United States. They are still an Italian citizen. They didn't revoke their citizenship or anything like that, but they're in the United States now and they have a child. That child, my grandparent, is by right an Italian citizen. It doesn't matter that they weren't in Italy when they had their kid. That kid is by right an Italian citizen. And they can then pass that down. Now, it doesn't matter after they're born. And it's like, yep, by birthright, they're an Italian citizen. Doesn't matter what my great grandparents do after. My great grandparents can eventually naturalize or whatever. Doesn't matter. But because they have the right to Italian citizenship, they can then pass that down. So it gets passed down to my parents, which then pass it down to me. And that's how it works. So my great grandparent came to the United States, had, in my case, my grandparent, and they were not United States citizens. They had not naturalized yet. So by right, my grandparent was an Italian citizen. They had right to Italian citizenship. So they kept passing that down and it got to me. And there are different, if you think this might be you, if you think you might qualify for this, you're going to get a lot out of this series because we're going to do a lot of deep dives into this because this is what I myself am going through. I'm going through the process. So we're going to be talking about this a lot. This isn't the only thing we're going to be talking about. So if you're thinking, Ron, I don't have any Italian heritage, don't worry. We're still going to be talking about tons of other things too. But if you have Italian heritage and you're thinking, I wonder if I qualify for this, we're going to be diving into a lot of different stuff. And there's also some resources out there where they will do an assessment for you for free. You can get a free assessment. That's what I did. But you have to do a little bit of legwork on your own first to find some information. And again, those are just the cliff notes. We'll be doing a much deeper dive in later episodes. But that is the method I chose. I chose citizenship by descent. So getting into the factors, why did I choose that method over other ones I could have chosen? Well, first of all, an EU passport, and look, I know the EU has its problems. I know Italy has its problems. Every country has its problems, okay? We just assume that here. But an EU passport, and specifically an Italian passport, is considered one of the most valuable passports in the world. It is up there. In fact, I think the recent rankings, it was Japan, Singapore, and then I think Italy and Ireland were like right underneath it. Now, they determine these rankings based on how many countries you can go to visa free, how many countries you can go to in general, and just the overall what the passport offers you, what the citizenship offers you. So that was a factor I considered. The other factor I considered was family. I have family ties over there. I have family over there. So if I were ever to leave the country, it'd be nice to go to a place where I have some people. Now, obviously, I thought about with Canada. With Canada, I'd be closer to my family here. So that's a factor too. But I thought about my family over in Italy. If I were to ever restart, having them there would be infinitely helpful. The other factor I considered would just be, what would this passport do for me, even if I never actually relocated? And there's a lot of things having an additional passport can do for somebody, even if they don't necessarily live there. Now, to get healthcare and stuff like that, you got to live in a place. Like you kind of have to live there. Like it's not. Don't think, oh, I'm gonna get citizenship by descent, and then I'm never gonna leave the United States. And if I get sick, I'm just going to fly over there. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I'm pretty sure it does not work that way. You would have to actually be a resident living over there to get those kinds of things. But there are so many other benefits that having an EU passport does give you. If you ever wanted to buy property anywhere in the EU, it's not impossible without being a citizen, but it's infinitely easier if you are. So there's a lot of different benefits that a second passport like that gives you. And those are all the things I considered. And I'm still not seeing the chat, which is weird. So to kind of sum it up, factors to consider: family factors, the passport in general. What does the passport offer you? How would the passport be beneficial for your life? Depending on what you choose to do. If you choose to stay, if you choose to go, if you choose to do a little bit of both. Your situation. What do you offer other places? I know it's kind of a bummer you have to think about those things, but you do. If you're one of the categories that Canada really likes and really seeks after, if you want to go up to Canada, maybe that sort of sweetens the pot for you. Similarly, if you're just kind of a self-employed person and you think, well, gee, I might benefit from a lot of the resources the EU has to offer, maybe that's something you should look into. And so those are all the things I considered. And those are all the things you should consider: family, work options, the type of resources that are available to you, where you might fit in. And that's why I chose what I chose. With Portugal, I kind of was like, well, I don't really know Portugal that well. And with Canada, it was kind of like, well, I just kind of felt that, in my personal opinion, an EU passport, and specifically an Italian passport, was just more valuable to me than you know than uh than Canadian, or most things I could get. I can't see the chat, which is really weird. I don't know why. Let me hit refresh and see if that does anything. Let me do that. Let me do that. And then that'll pretty much be the episode for today, y'all. These are not long episodes, which I kind of appreciate, and we're gonna kind of keep it that way. Yeah, I cannot see the chat, so I hope you guys are chatting, and I really appreciate that. I hope you guys are chatting, and I wish I could see it, but I can't. So there you go. Sorry about that. Guys, that has been the second episode of Expatriate. Again, this is the series about factors to consider if you're thinking about leaving the United States, different ways to leave the United States, should you want to do it, or you just want to be prepared if it comes down to that. This is under the Get Your News On With Ron umbrella, and a couple other general announcements. Tour dates, I got them. Get your tickets. Do not wait. Iceland, I'm coming to you. I can't wait to see you. I've never seen you before, but I'm going to see you June 28th and June 30th. You can go to ronplacone.com for tickets. I'm part of the Reykjavik Fringe Festival, and tickets are available now. I'll be performing on June 28th and June 30th at Hurrah. I think that's how you say it. Looks like a really cool venue. You can get tickets now at ronplacone.com. Also, Pacific Northwest, Graham Elwood and myself are coming July 28th, Portland, July 29th, Seattle, July 30th, Vancouver, British Columbia, baby. Can't wait to see you in Northwestern Canada. Get those tickets at ronplacone.com. This has been Expatriate. This has been the second episode of the series. We'll be back probably not until June with the next episode. But again, I'm figuring out the footing on this. Maybe we'll do it more than once a month. We'll see. There's a lot of a lot of content to get through. And as I started this, I realized there's so many topics to cover, but we will be back for the third episode. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, and a general strike.